Thank you for that very kind introduction. I'll try to do it justice here for a few minutes. I want to thank the Alumni Association and the Board of Directors for this honor, and I want to thank Peter Kocha, who has joined us here for lunch, for nominating me for this award. He and I share another honor, which is that we're both Glenna R. Joyce Scholars. That scholarship allowed me to attend the University of Notre Dame and gave me the space to really fully explore anything that I wanted to study here. I did not start my Notre Dame career with the goal of becoming an artist. I'm from the Midwest, so my understanding was that you went to college to get a degree in a useful and practical field so that you could get a job. And every adult was asking me, and every other new high school graduate, the same two questions: where are you going to school? And what are you going to major in? And depending on your answer to that question, the third question would be, what are you gonna do with that degree? And at the time, I didn't realize that that path from a college to a degree to a job wasn't necessarily going to be so linear, even if I wanted to be, but I really wanted to have a good answer to that question for people. I liked math and science, and I'd taken art lessons every Saturday throughout my childhood. So based on those ingredients, I thought maybe architecture was the answer. It definitely sounded like a real job to me when I was 18, and I hoped it would shut down those questioners and I could go on my way. So I started out as a freshman architecture major, and that lasted for one semester. I just wasn't excited about it, and it just didn't feel like the place that I belonged. And one day I took a shortcut through Riley Hall, which at the time was the Fine Arts Building. I'm not sure now because it's been a while since I've been here, but I smelled the turpentine and the oil paint fumes, and I thought, yes, this is for me. So that semester I took my first design class, and I fell in love with that process of visual problem solving, using artwork to communicate ideas or to tell a story. I'd never heard of graphic design before, but it seemed like a real job. I mean, after all, there's logos everywhere and signs and posters and things. It felt like the right place for me, but my parents were not really convinced. They'd never heard of graphic design before either, and art major sounded neither practical nor useful. But as I mentioned before, I was attending Notre Dame on a Joyce Scholarship, and there were no restrictions on the field of study, so that gave me the freedom to pursue whatever I wanted. So I switched my major to graphic design and dove in. And that spring semester was 1995. I just did this math, so 30 years ago. When I came home for Christmas break my sophomore year, it was still 1995, I discovered that there was an animation studio, of all things, in Columbus, Ohio, where I lived, and that they were working on a feature film for Warner Brothers. I'd been interested in animation since going on a family trip to MGM Studios when I was in high school, where they had this kind of fishbowl tour. You could walk through and look through the glass and see what the animators were doing. And that was the first time that I realized that working on movies was a job that people did, but it seemed very cool, but it did not seem like something that I could do. But when I heard about this studio that was, in the town where I grew up, I thought, well, I might as well go over and see what it's like. So I went over there with my resume saying that I'd graduated high school, because that was really all I'd done up until that point. And I didn't have an appointment, so I don't necessarily recommend this as a technique, but the manager was kind enough to talk with me, and I ended up getting a summer job there to work on that Warner Brothers movie. And spoiler alert, you can now guess that was Space Jam, the original one that came out in 1996. And yes, I was still an undergrad at that time. But after that, I was hooked, and I've been working on animated films ever since. I've been at Pixar now for 16 years, but in animation for nearly 30, and I've worked as a production assistant and a color stylist and a compositor and a shading groom artist and a character supervisor, and now a visual effects supervisor. So I get to lead about 9 or 10 different teams of different technical artists, layout artists, character designers, sets artists, lighters, sim effects, etc. on a film, as you mentioned, coming out in 2026. I've worked at big studios and small studios using pencils and paintbrushes and computers and tablets. And each film is somehow a completely new challenge, even if it's actually a sequel and it seems like it should be easy. But the process of figuring that out with colleagues that are inspiring and that challenge me never really gets old. This award is given to a practicing artist, and I think the crucial part of that phrase is practicing. My advice for people that want to work in art or design or animation is always to find people that do that thing that inspire you and show them your artwork and talk about their artwork. That's really the day-to-day of almost any artistic pursuit. You make something, you evaluate it, you get feedback, you change it, you repeat until the time runs out or the money runs out, one or the other. And that iterative cycle with feedback and critique is really where the practice comes in to practicing artist. That was a really important thing that I learned here at Notre Dame in my art and design classes, and I depend on those skills every day, asking for and receiving critique of my work and offering useful creative feedback to others. I also learned here how to separate my artistic work from myself and my identity, even when I've intentionally interlaced them. When people hear that I work at Pixar, they often say, "That's my dream job. How did you get there?" And it can be hard to explain that when I started college in 1994, the first ever computer animated feature film, which was Toy Story, hadn't even come out yet. So not only did I not know that I wanted to work in this field didn't actually even exist. And if I look back over my career so far, it looks like a clear path from one thing to the next, but really it was a series of leaps of faith and following my instincts towards ideas and people that were challenging me and inspiring me, following the smart people, the curious people, the people that want to work together to make something better than what we could make alone. In animation, we truly can do anything. The stories that we tell aren't bound by time or space or physics. And in order to tell compelling stories, we draw on our experiences, our emotions, and our connections to community. And when we get it right, an otherworldly story makes you feel something about the world that you live in. And an unrecognizable character nudges you to recognize something in yourself. Storytelling is one of the most human things that we do as humans. Shared stories build our sense of common perspective and create paths for new ideas to travel. It is a privilege to encode messages this way that will be seen not only today, but hopefully into the future as well. And I'm very grateful for that privilege and for this recognition from this group. Thank you.